I have the chance to shape this community and the future of this software as well, then I still can switch the front end because Meteor is basically headless. And in its core, it's headless. So I can just use Vue, Svelte, React, or Blaze, which I still love a lot. Why should I change things that work pretty well? There's no need to change that.
Jan Küster is one of the most active MeteorJS members. He has been using the framework since 2015 and is very involved in the community, maintaining a lot of different libraries and being one of the hosts of This Week in Meteor, a podcast that is live streamed every week and maintained by the community. In this interview, we'll talk about how he got involved with Meteor in the first place, why he thinks the framework is still great for building applications nowadays, and what are his thoughts on the future of the community.
First of all, my name is Jan Küster. I'm from Germany. I jumped into tech quite a while ago. It was 2007, and I wanted to study biotechnology, actually. And it was, at that time, it was not possible with my high school diploma to get into that course. And then I looked what else I could study, which would be interesting to me. And then I started to study media informatics. I had some background in programming and did a lot of stuff with my computer, especially producing some digital music and stuff. And then I just found, wow, programming is cool and makes fun, and software development, software engineering, that's actually what makes fun to me, which I really like. And web development is even cooler because everything is open standards, everything, you can read things up. It's all there. You don't have to find wizards with hidden knowledge, but you actually can get to the truth of everything on your own. That was just quite impressive. So that was like how it all started, that I went into this whole tech and web development.
Got into programming before even start college, before even start working with it. How was that? How did you found out about programming before?
The very first contact with all that was building a simple HTML website. It was just a fun afternoon class, even not at my school, which a school classmate told me, like, let's go there, and then we just built a website, and it was mostly just fiddling around with HTML. And I just later on found out, oh, you can actually use PHP. At that time, you could use PHP to create stuff like a user session, and then you can, across the websites, have the users content available and things. And that was at that time, that was just fun and play. I didn't thought about getting into tech as kind of a career or something, especially because at school we actually learned programming with Turbo Pascal, and it was just command line stuff, and it was just crunching numbers, and I thought it was pretty boring. I was thinking, like, is programming all the time that boring?
So it was mostly fun, no commitment with professional stuff and all. Simpler times, right?
Yeah, simpler times at that time. And the more professional era began when I started to work as a side hustle besides my studies, because I wanted to finance my master's degrees without debt, basically. And because, I mean, you don't have to take huge credits to study in Germany, but still you have to pay for your rent, for your groceries, everyday living and stuff. And then I found quite a nice way to work besides my master studies and at my research group, where I'm still part of today. So that things went from one thing to another, basically.
And what was your first experience as a professional coder, we could say, like, was your first gig?
Yeah, the first gig was actually with Adobe Flex. That was, at that time, was Flash on steroids, basically. So you had all these kinds of nice features of the Flash runtime that provided all these integrations the browser would not handle at that time. You had all these audio, video APIs. We could do so many fancy things, even on the binary level. And Flex was a developer-oriented framework around that ActionScript and Flash runtime. Because mostly when you hear Flash, you think about designers doing some clicky bunty, clicking here, clicking there, having some animation stuff. And Flex was oriented on real software engineering concepts. Actually, it was quite powerful, actually. So if Adobe wouldn't have died with, not Adobe, not themselves, but if Flash wouldn't have died, it would have been a very strong and powerful framework.
People did some crazy stuff with Flash and ActionScript, right?
There was a time there were these very famous Flash animations you could find on the web, like with the badgers jumping around and like people did these fun animation time. That was the golden era of the internet. There were just cool content around on any website you can find, you know?
Yeah, there was this animation that me and my friends loved to watch that was in Portuguese. That was, I think it was Mr. Cockroach in English. So it was like a lot of episodes of a guy that was a cockroach hero, whatever. And they made this animation where they kind of recreated Lord of the Rings story, but instead of Frodo, it was Mr. Cockroach, and it was like long, and it was really well done for the time, you know. But it was like I'm gonna see if I find this out. This is something I had completely forgotten about, just like as you mentioned. I remember. So anyway, and when did you meet Meteor, Jan? How was your first time, you know, get in touch with Meteor?
After my master's degree, I worked at a company at that time, and then I got an offer back from my university to come back to the research group with perspective on doing PhD and things. And at that time, we wanted to create a classroom management system to research on effects in the classroom when material is presented in a way that students, especially nursing students, should start to reflect on their actions and things. So it was mostly an audience response system paired with self-learning and all located in class. And because of these real-time characteristics, we looked for frameworks that mostly provided that. And then we came to Meteor. And that was like in December 2015, there was the research. So I started basically on January 1st, basically I started with, of 2016, I started with Meteor.
And at the time, you had already programmed on other backend frameworks or something like that? Or this was your first contact with this kind of tool?
For the Flash tool, which we built beforehand, I've built a backend, but in PHP. And at that time, there was, I think there was something already around, something like Laravel or more sophisticated PHP frameworks, but I was not very sophisticated with that. And so to me, it was also very important to have some beginner-friendly framework that helped me to implement the full stack in a comprehensible way without always thinking about, am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? Is this correct now? And so on. And what I thought was great about Meteor at that time was the documentation was just so huge. Every topic I wanted to cover was covered. And then combined with the requirement for this whole real-time WebSocket based, that was just perfect fit.
And other than the documentation, what do you think that made Meteor great at the time that you met that you met it?
I'm a very practical person when it comes to trying out tools and things. They can have a very great documentation, of course, but if the abstractions from the documentation are not met in the actual practice, then it gets annoying. And I tried Meteor and I just started coding a few things, did the tutorials, and then just tried my own mutations of things and UIs. I always start with the client and then start digging through to the backend when I'm exploring, basically. And that worked quite well. It just worked, and that was very important to me, that it worked and it was comprehensible. I knew it worked, and I knew I did something, and it caused a result. Of course, there was some magic at that time. I didn't understand why things were automatically running, but that was okay at that time, because in the guide it was declared as the reactivity, and it was referred to Tracker. So I knew, okay, there is something that is responsible for that. This is very important. I knew there is something responsible for this. So it was not just magic. It was, as I said, comprehensible, and it worked.
And when did Meteor became something more than a tool for you? Because flash forward to 2024, you were nowadays one of the most active members of our community. You have done many different contributions. You were very active on the forums, on the discussions, and so on. How did this passion, we could say, for Meteor started? When did you started being more than just a user?
There are many factors that came together, and there's one thing that I experienced on Stack Overflow, and that was that sometimes people are very rude, even if you're a beginner, and don't give you pretty nice feedback. And I also found that on the Meteor community, that wasn't the case. It was always like neutral to positive, and which I kind of liked. And I opened I forgot which one it is. I could have looked up on GitHub, but I opened my first pull request on some repository on Meteor, and I think it was even not accepted, but it was explained why, and in a neutral and not offensive way. And it was just, I just felt, okay, that's cool. So I tried again, and then some other pull request, and that got accepted, and I was like, cool, I can contribute here. And this was one factor. So I just could. There was a low barrier of contribution, a fairly low barrier of contribution. There's always certain barrier, of course, because you first need to understand the whole concept and Git and everything, but that worked out pretty well. The second factor was we created a lot. We produced a lot of code in this project, in the healthcare classroom management. And I found, there is so much code to abstract from, because we started another project and I had no time to find a new framework. So I just said, okay, let's try it with Meteor. Maybe it works out. And it worked out. And I very quickly found there are many overlapping things. So I created many packages. And I was also thinking, hey, let's promote some packages. Let's see what people think about my packages. So I started promoting packages, and then it just, things came from one end to another. And then there were these situations. I found that Autoform, which was one package we heavily relied on, was not maintained anymore by its core maintainer. And there was some other guy trying to do some migration work, and I just jumped in and helped with, and then the other guy dropped out as well on the maintenance work, and then I dropped in, and things went together. And I was thinking, okay, I can be definitely a valuable part in this whole ecosystem and provide things. And then there was this situation between MDG dropping out and Tiny jumping in. And at that time, I felt like, okay, if this official side is now decreasing and people start worrying and stuff, this is open source. And I think I understood the concept of open source, that even if the officials draw back, then the community can jump in. That's basically the core of things in open source, in my opinion. And that's where I tried to step up and say like, hey, yeah, this is the Autoform package. I'm trying to update this. Please take a look at it. And I think somewhere around that time, it was also Storyteller who I was in the talks with. And then we thought about, hey, let's add these packages to Meteor community packages. So it was all a little bit, many things coming together, basically. And then there was the ambassador program. And then somebody came to me like, hey, you got a t-shirt, you're ambassador now. And I was like, okay, why not?
Why do you think that the Meteor community at the time you got more involved was more friendly than Stack Overflow and other communities? Do you think there's any specific reason for this? Because I know what you mean by Stack Overflow and other communities, because I was already a heavy user of Stack Overflow, and I remember that at the beginning it was like very intimidated about asking, and if I didn't format the question properly, or if I didn't follow the rules or the proper way of asking, people would be rude and close my question. So how come? What do you think is different in the Meteor community?
The question is if the Meteor community is so different from other web development communities. I think web dev in general is very positive, it's a very thriving ecosystem, and many people are very positive. I mean, I'm also on Twitter and X and following many people, and there's usually not so much hate around, but rather like sometimes there's critical information exchange, I would call that, but it's not like that there is like toxic environment or something going on, at least among many developers and people that are leading in these ecosystems. And it was just the way it was in the Meteor community. I'm not one of these persons that is good in analyzing why is that. I just found maybe it's because of course on the leader level that they have a good moderatorship. I mean, there are still people in the forums that are there still today doing just moderator work. I mean, just heads up for them, please. Yeah, just give them a like from time to time. That's awesome. And I think the general voice, their general kind of language and the general interaction there is just on a good level.
So since Meteor was launched, it got popular, and there was a period where if it wasn't so much, there was some drama involving the previous company that owned Meteor and that decided to pivot to another product and so on. And there was this, period of time where things were kind of weird. People didn't know exactly what was going to be the future of Meteor. And what made you stay until today? What made you keep pushing things and keep contributing and keep making things move?
So on the one hand, it is like this the one side is a very calculating and analytic side of things, and that is we have projects running on it and we want to keep them running on it. I neither have the time nor the resources. No, I don't want to migrate away to something else, because why? It's running and I want to keep it updated. We want to keep it improved. I'm confident in how the framework works. I have my critic points from time to time, but I don't have a fundamental critic on the whole framework itself. And I have a good comparison. I'm working with Laravel on PHP, which is also quite nice, by the way. But I'm also working in Python, and I've seen quite a few things, and I'm very confident that Meteor is a very sophisticated and mature framework. That's how it is, and that's one side of things. And the other side of things is that once Meteor software came on the stage and it was clear, okay, there is leadership back on this thing, and they must have some sort of business concept behind to keep their company running. I think this is always a trust factor that's really important, especially in open source. If this is a company-backed project or an organization or foundation backed or something like this is always much more trustworthy than if it's just one person. Unless it's Evan Yu, who is just trustworthy by himself. Apart from that, it's just one of the biggest factors to me. And I mean, you did a great job at Meteor Software to keep this coming back and get this out of this very unpleasant situation where people were moving away. I mean, moving on is daily bread and butter in the JS ecosystem, but moving away because you think that something is dead is like not the best situation for someone wanting to keep on going with the product, right? Or with the product based around that framework. But I was convinced it was pretty good. At that time, also Felipe was doing a good job, and then Fred taking over, and then he's now also doing a great job. And this is like one of the biggest trust factors, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's this thing where people sometimes discussing tech. It's like I don't know if this is some sort of beginner's mindset, but there is this talking sometimes about is something dead or that something is going to die now that we have this new framework, this new tech, this new, I don't know, AI thing. And in tech especially, things don't die like this, right? It's not like, okay, so now that Meteor is not popular anymore, let's throw away other projects we did during the past 10 years and use this new framework because this is the best thing ever. Because this is not how things work, right? This is not like, as I said, one of the main reasons he stayed is a practical one. You had a lot of projects running Meteor, you had a lot of things using it, and there's no reason for you to move away from something just because it's not the most popular thing anymore, right?
Of course, also has something to do with identification and status, of course. I mean, there's a community. I'm already integrated in. I'm a person working from home, sometimes very often alone because I'm working from home. And there's also a part of community that I'm integrated now, and I know there are people I can talk to, there are topics I can talk to them with. So it became, of course, part of my life. And why should I just leave all that behind? I mean, it's not that I have to keep on it, but it's like it's great. And also I have the chance to shape this community and the future of this software as well, because of course I have some kind of an influence now, and I also have ideas I want to bring in, and hopefully for the benefit of everyone. This is also a factor. It's like the social or human side of things, and not only the technical, of course. And one thing I just want to add to the something is that or something is abandoned theme. So if it's really abandoned, then you could say it's some kind of that, but even this is not always the case. I wrote an article on DevTO, which I published for Meteor Software, by the way, about this whole topic. When should you consider something that? I mean, jQuery is still one of the most well-known and most used NPM packages around there. And how old is jQuery? 2006, 2007? I don't know. I don't know. I think I looked somewhere at the graph at that time. It's ages old, but it's still there. It's not dying that fast.
But I think that still makes Meteor great nowadays in 2024. Even all of these things that we talked about, it not being as popular as it would be in the past, like what does it make great compared to other frameworks and tools that we have nowadays?
There's one thing that's still a very big plus, and that is it makes the whole data layer being abstracted away from me. And when I have ideas, I can easily make them work without thinking about this whole data management layer. I create some, I have my packages where I abstracted things away or a lot. I just declare some objects on the server about what's the name of the collection, what's the schema, and do we have basic root endpoints? If so, just create them as they are from the schema, and if not, add some methods. And on the client, I can push things together pretty fast, and then I can validate some ideas pretty quickly. And this is something I would struggle with any other framework right now so much. And here comes the other thing into play. If I need to switch the front end, then I still can switch the front end because Meteor is basically headless. And in its core, it's headless. So I can just use Vue, Svelte, React, or Blaze, which I still love a lot. There's also a new UI component, just a little advertisement here, doing an UI component library for Blaze and Tailwind, which is coming out very soon. I'm very flexible in my choices, but can stay on my preferred stack. And the tight integration with MongoDB, it's just working. I don't want to set up a DB. I don't even want to set up anything on my development for this DB. I don't want to download and install an SQL database or something like this right now. At least me. I'm totally fine with MongoDB in 99% of the cases. And so this is just it's the stack I'm comfortable with. And why should I change things that work pretty well? There's no need to change that.
Tell me a bit about your work nowadays, what you have been working on, your projects, and also Meteor related projects in the community that, every week you have like a commitment on a Friday with Alem and Storyteller. Tell us more about that.
So my main work is still at the university, and I'm doing research software engineering. So my strongest focus right now has a little bit shifted at my workplace towards doing research software for other researchers, mostly in the qualitative department. And I still have these Meteor projects there, the classroom management system, and I'm also developed an app with Meteor and React Native for low literacy people, where we do research on a competency model that has been developed years ago for people with low literacy, that we try to validate and improve the competency model and the learning materials for many areas: reading, writing, calculating, language understanding, and then related to workplace, to apprenticeship sectors and to other workforce related sectors. And the newest continuation of that will be development of a financial literacy learning model. And the app, as I said, runs with Meteor and React Native. And this is my biggest focus around Meteor right now. And of course, I still have many libraries I'm maintaining because of all the other stuff that has been developed is, of course, still running and it needs to be maintained. This is my chore work I have to do on a daily basis. And of course, also the Meteor migration was a big effort in combination with that. And I also have some projects I'm doing with Meteor right now on a private level. So like starting one or two side businesses, and Meteor came in very handy for that as well. So as I said, why change to something else if it's just running and I can quickly validate ideas? This is for startup the best you can do. You have ideas, you can validate them, you can work towards a minimal lovable product quickly. This is really important. And yeah, so and then there's, of course, as you said, there is the This Week in MeteorJS stream on Fridays. And this is something, it started as an experiment. So Alim and Storyteller and me just thought about, hey, let's do this. Let's do a stream and see how it works. And then we just continued because it made fun. We had some situations and moments where we thought, oh, this is getting really exhausting, but that's normal. I mean, you're on YouTube as well, and you're experienced in that kind of work, and I think there is always sometimes this situation. Okay, now it's getting really exhausting, but I have to keep moving on, get over this, and then there will be new ideas, there will be new inputs. Something is coming up all the time, and we are currently in some kind of refactoring. We are basically changing some things internally because we want to have another StreamYard plan to get better resolution and things, but we also exchanged some ideas for new concepts, and we still reached out to people. Maybe you've seen it in the stream. We reached out to people like, hey, what's actually you're interested in? And from time to time people respond to that. For example, last time in the stream somebody was asking, hey, do you do some live coding? Where can live coding? And so this is something we will focus again once I have a little bit more time. I'm a little bit under time pressure right now. In the last weeks, it's really a lot. But apart from that, we're looking forward to meet also what the community needs, because I think this kind of stream is not only for doing some video stuff, but it is also some kind of an element of this community. Hey, there's a podcast, there are some people from the community speaking to the community and outside of the community, seeing, hey, we're here, we're alive, and we do great stuff, and here is what came up this week. Because as we talked about, this whole Meteor is that thing, raising awareness that it's there and that we're doing great stuff with it is the least we can do to make other people from the JS ecosystem outside starting to notice. So there are multiple layers of what this stream actually serves, and again, it makes fun. That's the most important thing overall.
So yeah, thank you very much for sharing your story here with us, your perspective about Meteor and a community. And where can people find you other than the Meteor forums? Are you active on social media, or do you prefer to, be a little less active there? Like not like me, maybe, because I'm posting everywhere every day. It's like sometimes overwhelming.
You're welcome, and I'm also posting where the day is, but in the recent month it declined a little bit because as I said, there's a lot of stuff at work right now. I'm available also on GitHub, of course, and so you can take a look at my GitHub profile. There are many articles also linked I wrote about Meteor and on JavaScript in general. And the articles are usually published on dev.to, which is a great platform to do blogging and publishing around web development. I think the web dev community is very active there. It's the biggest community there. And I'm also active on Twitter X, but I'm not the tweet guy. I'm usually reading much. I get everything noticed from everyone I'm following as long as I can read it. So when it's Portuguese, I don't know what you're talking about, but apart from that, when it's when I can read it and it's something that's interesting, I usually like and retweet things, and sometimes I also get into conversations. But I'm a little bit more passive there. But yeah, you can find me there. You can follow me. I can follow back and exchanging things, ideas. I'm also on the Meteor Slack, which is the community Slack, and of course at the forums. I think I'm on Stack Overflow. I have an account there, but I was not active in a year or something. I commented sometimes, but I'm also there.